Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join T2 and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
So welcome to the T2 Hubcast with me, Martin Johnson.
And me, Dale Barratt.
Dale, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Good, really good.
Very
Been
good.
on your travels this week?
I have, yeah. I've been up and down the country. I came back from Oxford yesterday, delivering down in Oxford, so that was good.
Nice. Well, I thought I'd grab you in the podcast room. It's rare that we're both in the office together at the minute, but topic we was discussing, I think it was last week now, is how to manage performance in the public sector.
Yeah.
And if I just explain what I mean by that, Dale, and why that's important. We work with different sectors, whether it's sports, whether it's public sector, whether it's private sector. And as many people will know who have ever worked with Trans 2, we work on leadership. And we talk through some models around how you manage underperformance, where the behaviors are not correct, they're not showing the right behaviors and coachability, and they're not performing. So it's the classic performance improvement zone, right? PIP, as they call it in the corporate world.
Yeah.
It's the classic, you're a leader and you have to do something. You have to deal with this. Either coach them to drive up their performance, or if they're not doing the job they're paid to do, or that is required of them, or they're becoming overly toxic or whatever it might be, you've got to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
In the corporate sector, it's a little bit more easy. And I'll speak frankly, Dale, the reason it's easy is because you can sack them, right? I mean, that might seem harsh, but you can. Yeah. You can absolutely follow a process as long as you followed the right process and showed support, and your intentions are to help that individual. If they're not helping themselves and they're not able to deliver upon what they're required to, you can either terminate their employment or you can move them out with the support of HR.
Yeah.
So there's a consequence to underperformance in the corporate world. Sports, you can sell players or athletes, you can get rid of them, right? If you can, there's ways you can manage underperformance. Public sector, and I'm talking specifically fire service, which you're very well versed in. I'm talking NHS, I'm talking police, education, whatever it might be. It's not as easy to do that. So we call it the straight bat zone, don't we, in our model? Underperformance, negative behaviors is the straight bat zone. You've got to play it with a straight bat, and now is the time to start setting some metrics and timelines, and we've got to start improving. So what I want to explore, Dale, is, given your vast experience in the public sector, is for leaders out there who have people who are underperforming and not showing the right behaviors, and given the fact that they can't just sack people, as easy as other sectors, how can leaders deal with it?
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. You touched on the sporting analogy, didn't you? And I used that yesterday. If you don't manage it as a manager, ultimately it'll cost you your job. If you think about Manchester United, Paul Pogba, the dressing room, the feeling that was in there, the only person who actually lost their job, they didn't move the player on. It was Ollie, wasn't it? It was Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So you as a manager, you need to keep a really close eye on how productive the team is, the productivity there. And, if you start to get this little creep of a toxic environment, you need to deal with it really, really quickly.
Okay, so let's look at the fire service then. You've been in the fire service how long, Dale?
Just coming up to 25 years. Yeah.
25 years. So you've seen this come and go. You've seen it happen lots of times. So in the fire service, with the unions and the complexity of the public sector at times, what if people are underperforming, i.e. not doing the job they're required to do, but more importantly, they're not showing any desire, intention, or the right behaviors and mindset to be able to make an improvement to that performance? How do you deal? How do you deal with it when you can't just come in and go, right, meeting 30 days? These are the metrics. You either hit them or we move to the next stage.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do that as easily. So, have you seen it happen often? And if so, and answer my question, Dale, is it a challenge?
It is a challenge. However, we are the same as any sort of other organisation out there. We have really good HR partners who guide us through the process. But when it comes to performance and capability, I mean, your first part is having a really good policy and procedure behind you. And that's your bedrock. And then you can sort of build off that. But There is this sort of conception around, getting rid of people in the public sector is harder. However, with tighter budgets now, the key is having everybody performing at the best they can, because we can't afford to carry people anymore. Every in the public sector life, it's service, and we try and make sure every contact counts. So everyone who works, whether you're front facing, behind the scenes, everybody has to play their part. So understanding performance and capability, it's not really about the metrics. It's about holding people to account around value.
Yeah.
And if you have a really good set of ethics, in the fire service we have a core code of ethics, or if in other parts of the public sector they abide by the Nolan principles, the 7 principles of public service. You can really dig down into that, and when you're bringing people in around performance and capability, you hold them to account around honesty, integrity, openness. Are we actually putting our communities first, or is this this performance around being a selfless act or a selfish act? So it's digging down, and it's understanding when we talk about metrics, there's probably the potential for investment in their coachability, giving them a period of time to get them out of this place that we're in at the moment, show an increase in performance by putting something in place. Things like gross misconduct, that's separate to what we're talking about, because we can do something about that. We're talking about how we increase performance in our people.
Yeah, absolutely. Gross misconduct, even in the public sector, or negligence, or whatever it might be, can be an instant dismissal, or you can actually take action and suspend or remove from duties, whatever it might be. What we're talking about is people who, are not quite doing the job properly or to the certain standard, although it's not negligent and it's certainly not gross misconduct. But more importantly, they're just disengaged, unhappy, they moan, they're toxic, so there's no real mindset or desire to improve. Now that's the problem, because that can filter into the wider team. That toxicity can spread. They can recruit allies. They can they can change the dynamic of a team. And I think this is why, although public sector spend is always under scrutiny, and you're always trying to manage to a budget and come in, under budget or on budget, the spend on leadership development doesn't waver, because I think there's a recognition that actually the only way to deal with this situation in the public sector, given you can't just hire and fire, is we've got to increase our leadership capabilities to deal with it. And that's why leadership development in the public sector doesn't seem to waver, because it's like one of the fundamental, most important things to being able to deal with underperformance. It's down to the leader of that team. So let me just loop back into something you said there, Dale. It's a leader's ability in a team to deal with that underperformance by driving a level of accountability and ownership with the individual. But rather than doing that just by big stick and threats and directiveness, which never works in the public sector, because someone will turn around to you and say, what are you going to do? Sack me. Right? What you're saying is public sector particularly really benefits from when the whole team, even at a peer level, are abiding by a set of values and guidelines and principles. So they're directly or indirectly holding you to account. So you become the minority. Is that what you're sort of saying?
So, we just briefly touched on it a minute ago, talking over a coffee, is that you can kind of look at it from two ways. There's climate and there's culture, and I think you call it environment, don't you?
Yes.
So if you're trying to change the culture in an organization, it starts with you. You as a leader, you as a role model, displaying the right sort of values that you want your team to abide by. And then hopefully the team will come with you. And if you build, the sort of culture in the team where we put our communities first, everything that we do, make every contact count, hold people accountable for what their disciplines, their particular part of the service is, then that's one thing, but the climate is the other. So what we need to understand is, particularly now with the cost of living, financial pressures that people might be under, there may be reasons for underperformance, and we can't just blanket with people with you're not performing, I'm giving you 90 days, these are the metrics. We need to understand why that is. So, and we've talked about this before about to really get down under the skin of the why are you behaving like this. You generally have to ask 4 or 5 times, don't you?
And that requires every leader on the front line with teams, not so much front line, but every leader of a team to have the skills and traits to be able to A, engage their people, B, ask the right questions, C, listen, and then D, with the knowledge you've obtained, take action, do something about it. And I find them 4 steps are severely lacking in the public sector. And I'll tell you why. Because everybody's busy, under-resourced, overworked. So taking a 10-minute coffee to speak with a team member who's not quite performing or who's disengaged or who's becoming negative, to go on that mission of discovery and find out why is not a priority for them. So they end up defaulting to, like you said, straight into you're not performing, I'm going to give you a directive, you need to improve, and then they become more combative and disengaged. There's an old saying, people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. And I think that's never more of a truer statement than in the public sector. My wife works in the public sector for the NHS, and her shift fundamentally is defined by who she's on with. Sometimes she'll leave the house and go, oh, can't wait for tonight, I'm on with so-and-so. Because she knows it's going to be a good shift because she's got a great Band 7 leader on, and that's going to make her experience. Or she'll be dreading the shift because there might be somebody else on who doesn't engage, doesn't listen, doesn't communicate, who is a bit dictatorial, who is unempathetic. So I think what we're sort of looping round to here, Dale, in the public sector is we ask the question, how do you manage underperformance? How do you manage that straight back zone when people are coming slightly negative in their behaviours and they're certainly not performing? Well, what you're saying there is first and foremost, right, we've got to try and get back some accountability against the values and the principles and the frameworks that we live by. But in order to do that, you've got to go on the mission of discovery first. You can't jump in. It's like, let's find out what the root cause of this is.
Exactly. It's not as straightforward as, I think this is where the sort of misconception around it, you can't get sacked from the public sector. It takes quite a while. It's not really. It's just we're invested more in people because ultimately the public sector is all about people. It's that end point of contact with our communities. So we need to invest time in getting down to the bottom of things. But you've touched on it, and it's making people accountable, and what it is bringing back into focus consequence. That no matter what part you play within this sector, ultimately the end point, which is contact with the community, they will suffer. So if you're in training, if you're in protection, prevention, engagement, whatever it is, you play a massive part. And underperformance, especially now with tighter budgets and less people, is key. You've got to be performing at your best all the time. So if we can invest in that and bring someone back into focus in terms of where we need to be in terms of value, and the way to do that is, again, asking why. And ultimately, if you ask why enough times and we get past the stock answers, well, it's a job, it's it's secure, all them sorts of things, if you actually get that, people want to help people. People are join, especially in the fire service, they want to help people. So let's really work on that. How can you help people if you're underperforming? We need to dig down. What do we need to put in place to make sure that happens? Do you understand the consequence? If you're not performing at your best, the end point, that community suffers. So it's making them realize, not you telling them, giving them the metrics and saying, I need this, this improvement from you. I need to see it. You need to see that for yourself. You need to understand what you'll play.
So this is a key part of this podcast, right? Because I think we need to try and answer this question, right? Because I think we've navigated to this point to, if anybody's listening from the public sector, I think they're probably thinking, yep, get it. And however, because what I'm about to say. So you go on them. So let's say you have a leader. There's underperformance in the team with a level of negativity or toxicity. They show empathy. They make time. They engage them. They go on the mission of discovering. They ask the right questions. They be patient. And then they find out the answers as to why that individual is underperforming or disengaged. There'll be 2 roads that come out of this. The first road is the answers will be things you can fix as a leader. Well, I don't like working with so-and-so. We don't get on, right? You can fix that with shift patterns, with a bit of facilitation,
mediation,
a bit of mediation, whatever it might be. You can try and fix that, right? But let's say, and there'll be a lot of other examples of where, I can't do night shifts. It throws my body clock. It does this, that, and the other, whatever it might be, right? So there might be things you can control out of that mission of discovery, which will get that person back engaged and increase their performance. But there's a hell of a lot, Dale, that you can't control.
Yeah.
When a firefighter or a nurse or a police officer sits there and says, I don't get paid enough for this shit. Right?
Yeah.
You can't impact that. You can't say, okay, I'll pay you more money. You can't fix that for them.
Yeah.
And you can try and, coach them and acknowledge and show empathy and, get them to realize their purpose again and why they do what they do. But the reality of their disengagement is real for them.
Yeah.
And there's many other scenarios like that. Listen, every time I come on a shift, we're on demand because people are on sick. People are leaving the profession. So the 12-hour shifts that I'm doing are far more hectic. I don't even have time to eat lunch, right? You as a leader can't fix that at your level necessarily, if that makes sense. So on the big stuff that where you go on that mission of discovery and people, start opening up about the reasons why they're feeling negative, their mindset's not right, they're moaning a lot, they're becoming that victim mentality, they're not performing, whatever it might be. That's the harder part, the harder road to walk as a leader.
Yeah.
It's not impossible because, you've got to try and deal with it and respond. But I guess if I'm listening to this as a public sector leader, that's the most challenging scenario that I face.
Yeah. It's almost like a switch. It starts very early, though. If you're a good leader, you've got your ear close to the ground, you're engaged with your team, you start to see these little changes. It could be like you're looking for them sort of indicators like increased sickness, working to rule. You kind of understand the work to rule analogy. Them indicators will make themselves present. Now, if it gets to the point where you've had these one-to-ones, you're trying to understand, but there's still no improvement, then we're starting to move into the straight back zone. And the straight back zone is basically where I need to see improvement now because I'm starting to build up evidence. I'm documenting things. I'm talking to the HR partners, and we're really starting to dig down into performance and capability because one of the things that we talk about here at T2 is challenge state and threat state. Now, I understand that there is an element of threat state. If the pressure is coming from the workplace and we can't control that for you, we need to put you in a better place where you can start to get yourself into this challenge state where you realize there is consequence, but do you know what? We're going to keep it positive. We're going to still make the workplace enjoyable. We need to be, need to get the team engaged. But if an individual is really going against that, being completely negative, and these people are role models, these people are role models to our new starters, our new recruits, apprentice, the public when they're out front facing, we need to take action. And that's the straight back zone. And that's where we do say, right, I need to see improvement. That's we're going to take this to the next level.
Yeah. And you do, and that is right with certain individuals. Let me just rewind a split second and come back to my two observations that I see across the public sector. I've worked heavily from the senior leadership teams across all public sector industries right through to frontline supervisors. And if I was going to answer my own question around what do the leaders do when they're faced with disengagement and they're faced with the wrong behaviors and mindsets, etc., and underperformance, is twofold. Number one, I think the leaders in the public sector who are really good at helping team members rekindle with their purpose of why we do this in the first place, of painting that picture, of telling that story about the impact on the community or the impact on people's lives, or what we actually do and what it means for others. Some of the leaders that I observe who manage performance really well and get people re-engaged are really, really good at that piece. And, in isolation, it's not enough, but it's the start. It's the start. Whenever I get a public sector cohort come through T2 and I'm working with them, we always get to the conversation of purpose. When we do 3 core functions of human existence, we've got to survive. We're in survival mode, first and foremost, which is where a lot of these problems come from. Reproduce and continue the species, number 2. And then number 3, we have to have individual purpose. And when I get to that conversation, I always look deadpan in people's eyes from the public sector, and I say to them, sometimes you lose your purpose, the reason why you do what you do. And when you lose that, you've got no chance because you're not in it for the money, right? You're certainly not in it for the money. And it's a very challenging, scrutinized industry to be in at times, right? I said, but, what you do is the ultimate purpose. You save lives. You impact lives. You change lives.
Yeah.
And there's not many people out in the corporate sector or the sporting world or any who can actually truly say that they directly do that. You guys can, and you can see their eyes light up. And I go on to say to them, so you've got the greatest purpose of all. But if you lose sight of it and you disconnect from it, you've got nothing. Right? And I say you should be bloody proud of yourselves in terms of what you do, because there's not many other roles in life, jobs, where you directly save, improve, or impact lives. And you can almost see him, Dale, for a split second, just hanging on my words and starting to reflect and think about what I've just said, and their sort of shoulders go back. They get a bit teary, some of them. And that's what the great leaders I think in the public sector do. They don't allow their people to lose sight of the meaning that they have.
It's exactly that, and it's like I say, it's bringing the consequence back into focus. Why are you here? And like if you ask enough times, you will get down to that. You're here because you want to help people, you want to save people's lives. Well, let's do something about it then. Because your performance right now is not demonstrating that. You're forgetting about actually why you put this shirt on, because you don't have to. You don't have to come work for us. And I hear it every now and then. I can get more money doing it. Well, go do it then. Go do that, because we need, especially with tighter budgets now and less people, we need, high performers, because high performance to us means saving someone's life.
I used to say the same in the military. When I served in the military, there'd be people 2 years in who would be moaning, hated being away, hated operations, slagged the military off. And I used to sit there and say to them, you made this choice. Nobody forced you. There's no national service in this country anymore. It's not like other countries like Turkey and Korea where you have to do a minimum requirement national services. It's not like that. You signed up. You chose to be here.
Yeah.
Why? Let's go back to that conversation. Why did you choose to be here?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. And I think that's what the great leaders in the public sector do. They bring alive in the mind of their team members the reasons why they not only joined in the first place, but the impact they have on people and the purpose that it gives them. The second element that I want to mention, Dale, is, and I had a one-to-one with somebody who told me this story, which really rang true with me, is that I had a one-to-one with somebody from the public sector, and I won't share which one it was or what it is, but this was the general premise. They were disengaged. They were feeling like they were going to leave. They hated going on shift. Their sickness had gone up. They just was completely disillusioned. We started a conversation and talking. What really resonated with me is that actually the thing that person was hanging on to was that they felt an allegiance to their boss.
Yeah.
They had a great boss who works really hard, who was very respected, and they didn't want to let the boss down. It wasn't about the organization. So I thought, we've got something here, because that's a good thing. And then we started talking about stuff, and I was like, and they were like, right, well, when people are calling in sick and we don't have enough staff to even man the shift and this, that, and the other, I said, well, why do you keep going in then? Why do you keep going? It's like, because I don't want to let my boss down, because what they do is they'll end up rolling their sleeves up and they'll do everything from emptying the bins to mopping the floors to actually running the shift and I know that my boss will not allow the shift to be unmanned, so they'll do it all themselves.
Yeah.
So you see, I aren't going to allow that to happen. I'm going to go in and support them. And I thought, wow, hang on a second. Let me just unpick that. This leader in particular is driving commitment and attendance and, contribution by leading by example.
Exactly.
By not sitting there in the office going, we haven't got enough staff. You're going to have to do this, or we're going to have to call more people in. That leader is quite willing to go, I'm going to keep showing up time and time again. I'm going to keep on keeping on. And if I have to do it all myself, right, others will eventually see me doing that and follow me.
Yeah.
And for me, so the first element is they're great storytellers and visionaries around their purpose. But the second element is they don't give up, and they certainly don't sit in their ivory tower with their badge on going, this is beyond me. Yeah. If we're short, I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll go in the trenches.
Yeah. It's exactly that. So when we look at sort of trust-based leadership, which is kind of what you're talking about, it's building up credibility. And I'm guilty of it myself at the moment. I work in a really busy training team, and I'm dropping in and I'm delivering BA, I'm delivering RTC, 5 ground skills, and it's just about demonstrating that this means a lot. It means a lot to me, but it should mean a lot to us as a team, because what we're producing is future firefighters, people who are going to be out front facing, delivering a service to people who desperately need it in the worst time of their lives, and that's the importance. If you can demonstrate that as a leader and filter that down through your team, then when it does get tough, and things will get tough, and things are going to continually get tough, there'll be challenges ahead where we have to make tough decisions. Them decisions are easy because you've got a good team behind you who'll come with you through it. The ones that drop off are the ones who just build on this negativity. Everything's a problem. Everything still is a problem, but it's how you face it. It's a mindset thing. So you either come with us, or if you don't, let's put something in place to try and invest in you, bring you with us. But ultimately, you're going to drop straight into the straight back zone, which takes us back to the start of the conversation around performance and capability. If you're not performing, in line with our values, which is putting our communities first, having some honesty and integrity about you, then there's a problem, and we need to do something about it.
And coming back to the point, you will always drop in the straight back zone if you lose your purpose.
That's it.
If you lose your connection with I loved your line there around, and it made me think while you was talking, you think about fire, police, NHS, ambulance service, etc. They are, fundamentally anybody who operates within those organizations are solely there for other human beings in the worst moments of their life.
It's exactly that.
I mean, that strap line alone makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck. And I think if an individual loses sight of that, they'll drop into the straight back zone, because they'll become disengaged. They'll become overly focused on what we don't do well, or what the problems are, or the pay, or the structure, or whatever it might be. And don't get me wrong, I'm not doing those challenges a disservice. We know there's challenge with pay in the public sector. We know there's challenge with pensions. We know there's challenge with resources and staffing levels. We know all this, right? And they are legitimate challenges that will inhibit people, will frustrate people, etc. But I think you can navigate all of those challenges when you're fully connected to your purpose.
Yeah.
If you become disconnected from that purpose for 1 second, 1 week, 1 month, all of those other things they're magnified. They become so much greater that, this is where people fall into that classic straight back zone.
Yeah.
So leaders listening to this, or organizations listening to this, think about a couple of principles we're talking about. We need to get that accountability back to do the job we signed up to do. How? We need to reconnect with our purpose, right? We need to get storytelling. We need to ask some questions. We need to deep dive into what it is that we're here to do, and ask ourselves the question, do we still want to do that?
Yeah.
Or not?
It's visual reminders. It could be infographics, and whatever it is. It's that subconscious reminder what you're doing, why you're here, the impact that you're having, because you can lose focus. It can become very selfish around. There's always going to be things around pay conditions, and within the public sector, there's some unions that do fantastic work around challenging that, holding people to account. But at my level, my level is about service delivery. It's about what our communities feel. And you summed it quite nicely there. You think about your own family or friends, members of the public, that God forbid they need us. We need to be on our game. We need to be absolutely flying in terms of performance. And the only way we can do that is keeping that sense of focus in what we're here for, keeping consequence within our lens. Making sure that we're aligned to it, and constantly reminding people. Do you know the part you play in this? And it's such a huge part, and we need to make sure this is really good.
And to me, that's the ultimate purpose.
Yeah.
With 1 minute to go, Dale, we could talk all day about this, and maybe we'll come back. But in summary, dealing with underperformance in the public sector is not as easy as other sectors.
No.
But it's not impossible.
That's right.
And, engage your teams, show empathy, ask questions, listen. The main focus for any public sector leader is to help people reconnect with their purpose.
Yeah.
Because it is the ultimate purpose. And also roll up your sleeves and lead by example. Because if you're a good person and a good leader who people trust and have high degrees of rapport with, they won't allow you to be in the trench on your own. They'll follow.
That's it.
Right? And I think you start there and you won't go too far wrong.
Yeah.
Dale Barratt, loved that, mate. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
and we'll be back shortly with another T2 Hubcast.